Good evening, and welcome back to our, I could say, the final class on the Shemona Esrei. We're going to do the 19th blessing, but in truth, in the series, we didn't cover the fourth blessing, and next week, God willing, I think we'll go back to the fourth blessing. So we have a complete, the third blessing, right? The third blessing we didn't cover, and we'll go back to it, God willing, next week. But today we're going to do what is the final blessing of the Amidah, the 19th blessing. And it's obviously more than just one of 19, because there's a principle in Jewish literature, a statement made in the Talmud, Hakol holech achrei hachitum. Everything follows the seal, the conclusion, the bottom line. Bottom line is actually a Talmudic expression that is used with regard to a contract, where you put the salient features of a contract, repeat them over again on the bottom line as a way of highlighting what the most important parts of the contract are. So the bottom line here is this final blessing, and it's important because it's about a theme that is a very important theme in Judaism, and it's also a major challenge because it's not easy. The 19th blessing is the blessing for peace. It begins with the word sim shalom, bestow or place peace. According to the Midrash, the first time this prayer was said was not said by mortals, but was said by angels. When was it said? When the Jewish people entered into the land of Israel, and God gave them a land in which they were able to live in peace. They had their own land, they had vanquished the enemy, and they were now able to, in the biblical way of putting it, each person was able to sit under his vineyard, under his fig tree, in peace. So the angels exclaimed, praise to God, God, that you blessed your nation Israel with peace. Of course, the peace didn't last very long, but for the time that they had it, it was a major reason for even the angels to exclaim that they were excited about this peace. The Talmud is a section of the Talmud, one page that goes through all the 19 blessings and explains why one blessing comes after the one before it. There's a thematic connection between all the blessings. So the last blessing we did was about gratitude, expressing gratitude to God. But in between gratitude and this one, there was another blessing that we didn't cover because it's not really part of the Amidah that we say. It's only said in the repetition of the Amidah. Let me give it a little bit of a background. In Jewish law, the Amidah is a prayer that we say each as individuals. Every individual says his own Amidah. When you pray with a minyan, with a quorum of 10 in the synagogue, in the morning and afternoon service, the Shliach Tzibur, the one who leads the service, is supposed to repeat the whole Amidah. He repeats the whole thing. Originally, it was intended for people who couldn't read, and therefore he would say it on their behalf. But even now, when people could read and they say their own, the tradition of repeating the Amidah is still part and parcel of Jewish tradition. Now, when the person who leads the service repeats the Amidah, he inserts certain things that we do not say in our own personal Amidah, our own personal Shemona Esrei, and that is the priestly blessing. At this point, sandwich in between the prayer for gratitude and the prayer for peace, is the priestly blessing, where the Shliach Tzibur, the one who leads the service, repeats the blessing that a priest, a Kohen, is supposed to use in blessing the Jewish people, in which we say, may God bless you, and may he protect you, may he shine his countenance upon you, so on and so forth. And then that blessing ends with the words, V'yasem lecha shalom, may he bestow peace upon you. So therefore, the Talmud says, because the priestly blessing concludes with peace, it's followed, therefore, by the blessing in which we ask God for peace. But then the question is, why is the priestly blessing said at that point? Why is it sandwiched in between gratitude and peace? And the Talmud explains, because it really belongs to the prayer before the prayer for gratitude, which is the prayer to restore the divine service in the temple. And the priestly blessing was said in the temple after the divine service, after Aaron and his descendants, the Kohanim, the priests, would finish their service. They would then bestow the priestly blessing upon the Jewish community. So then the Talmud says, well, if that's the case, we should say the priestly blessing right after the prayer for service. And why do we delay it? Excuse me. Why do we delay it until after the prayer for gratitude? And the Talmud says something very interesting. Gratitude and service are one and the same. Gratitude is service. Service is not just offering of the sacrifices, but it's expressions of gratitude. And the logic behind that is God does not need our sacrifices. That's an obvious statement that is made over and over again. God does not need for us to give him anything, to offer him anything. He doesn't need, he has everything he wants. So why do we offer something to God, in whichever form it takes, whether it's the literal sacrifice or other gestures of offering something to God? The offering is not because God needs it, but it's our way of showing appreciation for God. That's the way humans are. Human beings are funny creatures. The way, and I think animals also have that behavior in some cases, that if you want to show you like someone, you give them something. That shows appreciation for the person. That's why we have a concept of giving gifts at certain occasions, because it shows appreciation. The Talmud says that before a Jewish holiday, a husband is obligated to buy his wife something that she appreciates, jewelry, clothing, whatever it is that she appreciates, because it shows his appreciation for her. And that's true in every area of life. So that's why we have sandwiched in between the prayer for service followed by gratitude, we then have the priestly blessing, because that's supposed to follow gratitude. And once we have the priestly blessing, in which we ask God to bestow peace, we now focus on the blessing of peace. That's how it works. I hope it wasn't too complicated, but that's how the Talmud explains it. Okay, let's go into the blessing itself. Sim Shalom, bestow peace. Tova uvracha, goodness and blessing. Chaim, life. Chen, grace. Chesed, kindness. V'rachmim, and mercy. Okay. Why is this the final blessing? Why do we ask God for peace at this point? The very last prayer. As I've said before, because it's the most important. It's the last one because it symbolizes the fact that it's the final request, it's the bottom line, it's the seal, and this is what we believe is so crucial to our existence. Peace is something that we've been praying for. Jews virtually worship the idea of peace, sometimes to their own detriment. Sometimes they'll engage in peace negotiations, even if it means that they're going to sacrifice so much of their own security and safety. And that's a very painful topic in and of its own right, and I don't want to get into it, but suffice it to say that we are intoxicated with peace as a people. And the greatest canard that is said about the Jewish people is that they are obstacles to peace. There's no nation that has the word shalom in its lexicon in every form, in every shape, as the Jewish people. It's our prayers, it's everywhere. But it's more than just an important, perhaps the most important, but there's something about peace that relates to all the other blessings. When we finish the Amidah, what have we essentially accomplished? Every blessing that we recited has generated divine blessing. Blessing, as I discussed in earlier classes, means that we have the ability to channel God's kindness, his beneficence, his energy, his flow of energy and light in every respect, whether it's health, whether it's prosperity, whether it's redemption, whether it's forgiveness, whatever it is that we ask for, God has essentially said, I am channeling it down into your lives. The only problem is you need a vessel. You need something to contain those blessings. You could have all the wonderful gifts given to you. If you don't have a way to receive it, then the gifts are virtually useless. And that is the reason why this prayer is the final prayer. It could have been put the first, could have been the first one. It could have been any of the earlier blessings. Maybe that would have assigned a certain degree of importance to them. But the point over here is that peace is the vessel that contains all the preceding blessings. I told the story many times. It's a little humorous that I was once traveling through the desert, and I was told that I had to make sure I had enough water to be hydrated. So I wanted to go into the shop, and the stop that I stopped at to get gas, to buy myself a little bottle of water for $2, and I see a vending machine that said gallon of water 25 cents. So I thought, that's a bargain, 25 cents for a gallon, and here you get a half a pint for $2. So I put in a quarter, and lo and behold, a full gallon of water came out all over the floor, splashed all over. They didn't say that we had to have a container in which to place the water. That is crucial, because all the water wouldn't help if you don't have a container. It's interesting, and it's not a coincidence, that Torah is essentially a composite of both the written Torah and the oral Torah. The first compilation of oral traditions in writing is known as the Mishnah. The Mishnah forms the body of Jewish law, the first comprehensive body of Jewish law. What is the last word of the Mishnah? We're talking about a few thousand paragraphs. The very last line of the very last paragraph, of the very last chapter, of the very last tractate, of the very last order is the word shalom. And it quotes a verse that says, God could not find a vessel that could contain all of the blessings other than shalom. As it says, God gave his nation strength. God blesses his nation with peace. All the strength we have cannot really accomplish what it has to unless we have the vessel, which is peace. So that again reinforces the idea that peace is not just important, it's not just the beginning, it's the end. It's what actually creates the seal. I use the word seal as opposed to the word conclusion. The Talmud says that you always go by the seal. Now the connotation of the word seal is it's the end, but it also has another connotation. A seal is something that you use to protect the content of the thing that you want to have preserved. So you put a seal on it as a way of saying, as a way of indicating, this cannot be opened, it can't be lost. Well, the same thing is true with all of God's blessings. All of God's blessings can go the wrong way, can be diverted into something that it would not do any good for us. So what is the seal that protects it, that preserves it? The seal is shalom. And it's the most ubiquitous theme, I think, in Jewish literature. It's the very purpose and the very reason for the creation of the world, in a sense. God created the world to create peace between God and the world. In the words of the Midrash, that we said so many times, God wants a dwelling place in this world. What does that mean, a dwelling place? The world has its identity. God has his identity. The two are antithetical to each other, at least from the beginning, initially. And ultimately, we remove that divide between God and the world. We make peace between the reality that God has as his reality and the reality that we have. There's a famous midrash that says that the different traits came before God and said, don't create the world. And truth said, don't create the world. Kindness says, yes, create the world. And peace also said, create the world, because that is the goal of the world, to create that peace and harmony. Then we go on. We're asking God to bestow peace. We know what peace is. But then what does it mean by goodness and blessing? Goodness is something that speaks for itself, something that is positive. But not everything positive is a blessing. Because some things could be a positive today, and tomorrow they turn into a negative. For example, you win the lottery. Tomorrow the IRS is after you. So today was a big celebration. The IRS is just the first one online. And then all your relatives that you never knew existed, and all your friends, and all the causes, and all the charities are harassing you for the money that you won. That's just an example of how, very cute example of how something that starts off as being goodness may not always be a blessing. I remember reading about someone who actually won the lottery, and his life was so miserable as a result that when he was asked, "What is the one wish you have?" and he says, "I wish I hadn't won the lottery," because it turned out to be such a curse. So we want the goodness, but we want it to be a blessing. And then we go on describing what it is that we want. We want life. Judaism has always not just supported the idea that life is crucial, but that is the highest value. There's no value in our physical existence that is higher than life. Of course, there is something higher than life, and that is God. God is the creator of life. But God said, how do I reflect my presence? How do I express myself in this world? My presence is channeled through life. So we want life. We want grace. Grace is where God gives us something even before we earned it. God is gracious, and he says, I'm willing to give you an advance. In Simchas Torah is the very great celebration with the Torah. We dance around the synagogue, and it's called Hakafot, which means circles, cycles, but it also means notes, promissory notes. That God gives us blessing, but he gives it to us on credit. He expects us to repay him. So even though we didn't yet do the right anything to deserve everything, it's just the beginning of the year, God says, I'm giving you on credit, but I expect you to produce. I expect you to reciprocate. So the first thing is grace. Then when we finally deserve it and earn it, then it's kindness. And then when we don't deserve it and we blow things and we mess up, God still helps us, and he shows us his mercy and compassion. That's how Rabbi Yosef Alba, one of the great Jewish philosophers, the author of the work called Ikarim, which deals with essential principles of Judaism, that's how he discusses these three things. Grace is when we get on credit before we really earned it fully. Kindness is what we get when we earn it. And mercy is what we get when, in spite of the fact that we didn't earn it and we didn't prove ourselves to be worthy of it, God will still give it to us because of his compassion. Then we ask, bestow it upon us and upon all your people Israel. What does that mean, upon us? Us means the people in the synagogue who are saying it. Or let's say you're praying by yourself. So who does the us mean? Us obviously means the immediate family, your neighborhood, your community, and the entire people of Israel. But there's a little bit of a problem with that interpretation, because if we're going from personal to national, it should have said, Olai, upon me, then upon us, and upon all of the people of Israel. Especially if you're praying by yourself, commentaries ask. Why would you say upon us? If you're talking about the community, say upon all of Israel. If you're saying that, making it personal, it should say, use the singular, upon me and upon all of Israel. So one way of explaining it is that we're asking God not just for peace for the entire Jewish people, but we're asking peace within ourselves, internal peace, inner peace. Because in truth, there are three different levels of peace. If you want to be more specific, you can find even more than three. But we'll go into three different dimensions. The ultimate dimension of peace is the one I referred to earlier. Peace between God and the world. The source of all the disharmony, of all the discord, all the struggles that we have with one another, all originates in one act of God. And in terms of Kabbalah, it's called Tzimtzum. God withdrew his presence from the world. He created a vacuum. And we know that a vacuum is not a good place for things to happen. You want to have something that is receptive to that which is good, a vacuum is receptive to everything, negative as well. So that vacuum created a void of God's presence, which enables all sorts of discord to ensue. So the first type of peace we have to focus on is peace between God and the world, more specifically, God and Israel and the Jewish people. And that's what we're asking when we say Sim Shalom, bestow peace. The first peace that we're asking for is really peace between God and us. Now we go to the second level of peace. The second level of peace is peace within ourselves, between our souls and our bodies. And if you want to be more specific, the human being is made up of so many different faculties, so many different directions that he's pulled in. You have to be able to put them all together and unify all of those disparate drives and emotions and intentions that a person has. They should all be directed in the right way. So yes, we have to have peace amongst in the community, but peace begins with peace between God and us and peace within ourselves. And then when we have peace within ourselves, then we can approach having peace between us and others. There can be harmony and peace within the community, within the whole people of Israel. So these are the three different levels of peace. And then we say to God, bless us, our Father, all as one, with the light of your countenance. We're asking God to bless us. And we're saying, referring to God as our Father. We didn't start off this prayer by saying, Avinu, our Father, give us peace. But here, when we're asking him to bless us, we ask him to bless us as our Father. Because what is it that makes us one? Is because we have one Father. And as the Baal Shem Tov would use the analogy, that there's no greater joy for a father when all of his children get along. Because ultimately, all the children really have one father, one source, one origin. So when we want to talk about unity and peace, there are two ways of understanding peace between people. One way is it's a convention of society to help make sure that society thrives. If everyone's going to be fighting with everyone else, then we'll destroy ourselves. So we need peace as a means to an end. And the end is personal growth and prosperity. It's a selfish reason for peace. But Judaism says that peace that we look for is based on an inherent unity that we enjoy, because we are all children of this one Father. And as it says in the Tanya, that in order for us to have the blessings, which we said before, the Mishnah states, without shalom, without peace, we don't have the blessings, is because God only invests himself in an unblemished place. Just like a broken vessel will not contain the fluid, the liquid, God says, I cannot give a blessing to a place that is broken, that is blemished. On a deeper level, when we say, bless us, our Father, all as one, with the light of your countenance. The Hebrew word for countenance, panecha, which simply means countenance or face, also has another meaning. The word for face in Hebrew, panim, is related to the word panimi, inner. Now, it's interesting that the most outer part of a person is the face. That's the only part of the body that most people don't cover up, except when you're going into a bank with a ski mask on, you have interest in robbing the bank, or you come from some Arab country. The face is the one thing that is the most external. Everyone sees it. And that's how you relate to the outside world, by showing your face. Yet, in Hebrew, the word for face relates to the word pnimi, that which is within you. Because the truth is, your face is the worst giveaway. The face tells everyone if you're happy, you're sad, you're honest, you're dishonest. You could read it on a person's face if you know how to read faces. So here we're going to take the word God's face, the light of your face, to read your inner light, your inner dimension. It's not just that we share a root in God's outer dimension, in his external manifestation, because in that sense, all of creation is united. I know people might have been asking as we're talking, why are we talking about the unity of the Jewish people as one? What about the universe? Isn't it one universe? Isn't there's one God for the whole universe? Absolutely. That's a basic premise of Judaism, that God is present in every atom and every part of the universe because there's only one God. And even science has come from believing in so many disparate and conflicting forces, trying to find the unified field theory, one theory that will explain everything. Science has come to the point of recognizing the unity of everything. And the reason why there is a unity in nature, in the physical sense, because there's one God that creates everything. So then why are we focusing on the unity of the people, of the Jewish people? There's unity in all human beings are one, you could argue, not just human beings. Every amoeba and every atom and every particle of existence is one. This is the answer over here. Because we're talking now about God's inner light. From the perspective of God's external energy with which he creates the whole world, yes, the whole world is united because it has one divine creator, one divine sustainer of life. But when we talk about God's inner dimension, that inner dimension is revealed to different people in different ways. And that inner dimension is revealed uniformly to all of the Jewish people. They are all rooted in God's inner countenance. It also refers to the inner dimension of Torah. We'll soon see that in this prayer we talk about the Torah that God gave us, because Torah and peace are synonymous. We know what the challenge is. The challenge is that we have to bring peace to the world in whichever form. Peace between God and the world, peace between one person and another, peace between our soul and our body. But what is the means to accomplish that peace? The means is Torah. It says that the reason why God gave the Torah was to bring peace to the world. Now, a person can ask, what does circumcision have to do with peace? What does putting on tefillin have to do with peace? What does eating matzah on Passover have to do with peace? What does not eating pork have to do with peace? So they miss the real point of it. Yes, not eating pork does not necessarily bring peace between one nation and another. I don't know if diplomats include not eating pork as one of their tools up their sleeve to bring peace. But when we fulfill God's commandments, we are removing the veil, removing the tzimtzum, the void, the vacuum, the divide between God and this world. We are creating the true, ultimate harmony between God and the world. Every time we do any mitzvah, even if the mitzvah doesn't even look like it has anything to do with peace. Now, there are mitzvahs that are directly related to peace, like loving your fellow as yourself, giving tzedakah, giving charity, and so on and so forth. Those are command. Not stealing is also contributes. I would think that if you don't steal from someone, it's a better chance that he'll be your friend than if you steal from him. So there are commandments that directly relate to peace. But even the ones that have nothing to do with peace, ostensibly, they are ultimately also agents of that peace because they bring God and the world together. And every mitzvah does it in a different way. So if it's Torah that brings peace, Torah itself has two dimensions. There's the external dimension of Torah and the internal dimension of Torah. When you study the external dimension, which is the part of Torah that deals with behavior, the part of the Torah that tells us how to behave, how to do a mitzvah, how to avoid transgression. The Talmud, for example, would be the external or the exoteric part of the Torah. When you study that, it also brings unity in this world because it's God's Torah, God's wisdom, and that brings people together. But it only touches the externality of their being and links them together to the extent that beings can be united. But when you study and you draw upon the inspiration from the inner dimension of Torah, then you are able to penetrate to the core of each individual and of the world. In this way, you are actually able to create the ultimate unity and peace. So when it says over here, bless us, our Father, all as one, we're saying, God, you can bless us as one because you gave us this Torah. You gave us this source of peace that unifies us. And not only a source that unifies us in an external way, but even the inner dimension of Torah that unifies us in an internal way. And then we go on, for by the light of your countenance, God our God, you gave us a Torah of life and loving kindness, righteousness, blessing, mercy, life, and peace. Okay, so as I mentioned before, here it's where it talks directly about Torah. You gave us Torah of life. Actually, there's a... Okay. There's a little mistake over here, a little typo over here. Oh, okay. Now I see the Hebrew was messed up over here. But in the English, it's all fine. For in the light of your countenance. Well, again, what's the light of your countenance? That's the inner dimension of God. Where's that inner dimension of God revealed to us? How do we get to that inner dimension? If it's inner, how do we reach it? It's beyond us. No, it's because you gave us the Torah of life. Torah of life? What other Torah is there? Is there a Torah of death? And the answer is not quite, but something close to that. The Talmud says that a person could study Torah, but if he doesn't merit, and that word for merit also has another connotation, if he does not refine, the Torah itself can become a potion of death. A person could use Torah in a very negative way. It could be self-aggrandizing, to use it as a way of promoting yourself over everyone else, that you are holier than thou, and you can look down condescending at those who know less than you. It can contribute to your ego. Sometimes Torah could be used as a way of your knowledge of Torah to pervert what the Torah is really saying and turn people astray. There can be very sinister ways of using the Torah. Sometimes the Torah will give you arguments that can be used in a court of law between different people fighting about something, and you might use those arguments as a way of stealing something from someone else. Suffice it to say, there are ample opportunities for a person to take Torah, God's Torah, but because it's dealing with mundane aspects of life, it could be used in a nefarious way, and it becomes a source of death. It can become a potion of death, it says. However, if you are refined, if you merit, because of your refinement, then the Torah you learn will become a potion of life. We know in the Garden of Eden there were two trees. There were many trees, but two that were singled out for distinction. There was the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. What do the two different trees represent? The tree of knowledge is called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Is the tree of knowledge evil? Some people think it is, based on what they read in the Torah, that it's a tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve partake of it, and what happens? They brought death to the world. They're driven out of the Garden of Eden. It causes a catastrophe. So the tree of knowledge really gets a bad rap. We're going to defend the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge of good and evil was not a negative tree. It's the tree that produces the knowledge that enables us to deal with good and evil. And that, Kabbalah explains, refers to the exoteric parts of Torah, the external parts of Torah. When you study the Talmud or the Code of Jewish Law, and it tells you how to deal with a murderer, you're dealing with the lowest level of life. You're dealing with murders. You're dealing with people who are obscene. But yet the Torah tells you how to deal with these people. The Torah tells you how to get into the into the gutter, so to speak, and change the world. That's why we have the external part of Torah. And Maimonides says that even though the internal part of Torah is far greater than the external is the most important, because if we don't know how to live our lives, we're going to end up having failed in our whole mission, why we're here in this world. So which is more pristine, which is more spiritual? The internal part of Torah, the inner light. Which is more necessary for the world's existence? And what should we devote most of our energy to? Mastering the external parts of Torah. And they are, in the Zohar, represented by the two symbols. The external part of Torah is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's the tree that gives you the knowledge to tell you how to separate between good and evil, how to win the battles between good and evil, how to separate the good from the evil. The tree of life doesn't recognize evil. There is no evil there. That's why when you study Talmud, the Zohar says, it's replete with questions, arguments, back and forth. It's very, very lively, and it gets exciting sometimes. But what is a question? A question is an argument. A question is you're concealing. Something is concealed from you. Something is hidden from you when you question it. In the teachings of Kabbalah and Hasidus, in the inner dimension of Torah, very rarely do you find arguments. You have questions every now and then, but it's mostly rhetorical questions. The questions are not pronounced. There are no counter-arguments to speak of, because the Torah of life is the Torah that is full of life in its most pure sense. It doesn't have to get into the gutter. It's more divine, more spiritual. And therefore, when you're in touch with that level, that dimension of Torah, that's called the Torah of life. That's why if Adam and Eve would have eaten of that tree, they would live forever, because the only reason a person dies is because he has to deal with evil and negativity. That's part of the human condition, the way God designed it. That's why God pressured Adam and Eve to eat of the forbidden fruit. He wanted them to become normal. If they had eaten of the tree of life, that wouldn't be normal. Eventually, we will all eat of the tree of life, in the figurative sense at least, in the Messianic age, and then the inner dimension of Torah will be completely unleashed, and we will be able to partake of every part of it. But even now, we can still study it, and when you study it and you get into it, that is what gives you the power to touch God's inner dimension, the light of his face, of his inner dimension, which enables us to appreciate and live that unity. Then we say, you give us Torah of life and loving kindness. The Torah is both a Torah of life, and it's a Torah that loves kindness. King Solomon, when he extols the virtue of a Jewish woman, Eshes Chayil, the woman of valor, he says, Torah's chesed al lashona, the Torah of kindness is on her lips, on her tongue. The Torah is a Torah of life, but sometimes life isn't pleasant. The Torah is one of kindness. We say that the Torah is, all its paths are peaceful, and Torah looks for the most kind way of accomplishing something. Of course, sometimes the Torah is pretty harsh in terms of demanding punishment for certain transgression. But even, just to give you one example, even when someone had to be executed for a terrible crime, which is rare, the Talmud says that they would have to minimize the pain in order to fulfill the mitzvah of loving your fellow as yourself. Now, it sounds a little ironic. You're executing the guy and you're saying, I love him as myself? No, you're saying even someone who's at the bottom, the dregs of society, someone who was so evil, because to get executed in biblical times, you had to be campaigning for the death penalty. You had to be the greatest advocate of it, and you have to work hard to commit the crime in the presence of two kosher witnesses after being warned. Duly, right after being warned, you say, I don't care, and I'm going to do it anyhow. You're either crazy, in which case you wouldn't get the death penalty, or you're really such a vicious evil, vile person, that you deserved it. In which case, you would think, why should we try to minimize any of the pain? No, he's still your fellow. You still have to show love for him. So it's a Torah of kindness. That's the extreme example. But of course, everything about the Torah, the way it treats the poor, the way it tells us to treat the orphans, the widows, the converts, and it's a Torah of great kindness. And the kindness of the Torah is what helps to cement the peace. So the Torah's Chaim, that's the inner peace, the inner dimension. The love of kindness is the external dimension of Torah that generates kindness. And then we say righteousness, a Torah of life, of loving kindness, righteousness. Righteousness simply means that which is right. The Torah tells us sometimes what is right is not always the nicest thing. It's not always the most pleasant thing, but it's truly what is right. And it gives us blessing, mercy, life, and peace. If you count all of the things that are said about the Torah here, they count 7 different things. The Torah of life, love of kindness, righteousness, blessing, mercy, life, and peace. And one of the commentaries, I don't remember which one, says that these 7 blessings correspond to the 7 branches of the menorah. We're talking about light here. God's light, the light of Torah. Torah is represented by the menorah in the temple, which had 7 branches. Why 7 branches? Because each branch corresponds to a different divine attribute. Torah embodies all these divine attributes. Torah resonates with each one of our attributes. If you're a kind person, there's a part of Torah that will resonate with you, certainly. If you're a very just, disciplinary type of person, Gevura, as it's called in Kabbalah, and in actually biblical terminology as well, then part of Torah will resonate with you. Whatever level, whatever emotion you have, Torah will resonate with you. You will find a part of Torah that speaks to you. And it's that part of Torah that awakens the part of your neshama, of your soul, that will eventually see its counterpart in the other person and come together. So it will bring unity. And may it be pleasing your eyes to bless your people Israel. We're speaking to God, of course. May it be pleasing your eyes to bless your people Israel with your peace. We're asking God that you should want to bless us because we are deserving of it at all times and at every moment, because peace is needed every moment. It's not something that you could say we could afford to have it on weekends. If peace is lacking, unfortunately, then that one moment is a tragedy. Then we conclude with a blessing, which is the way we conclude every one of the 19. Blessed are you, God, who blesses his people Israel with peace. This is a reference to the peace that we have even today, whatever level of peace we have. And if you look at the state we're in today, not just looking at it as one slice of history, but looking at it through the panorama of all of history, the Jewish people today are living in the most peaceful time of all their history, except maybe, perhaps, King Solomon's short reign, a few decades. It was a more peaceful time than today. But we are living in the ultimate period of peace with all the problems that exist, and we're not trying to ignore those problems. But again, relative to every other period of history, we have the ultimate period of peace, which we believe is a sample of, a taste of the future. God in his kindness gives us a sample of the good that we're going to have in the future. We can look at even technology. Some of the things in technology are things that portend the future, how the world will be in the future. The world will be a much more united world. Today, you can be any place in the world, in every place in the world simultaneously, and connect to everyone. That's all a portent of the future. So the Messianic age is the ultimate age of peace, when true peace in every level, in every respect, external, internal, between one man and another, between husband and wife, between God and the Jewish people, God and the world, the Jews and the rest of the world. There will be peace in every single way. And as the Maimonides concludes one of his major work, the Mishnah Torah, that the reason why our sages and our prophets really desired the Messianic age, he says they didn't want it to control other people. They didn't want it to have power. They wanted it to have peace so they could study Torah. That was the ultimate reason why people pray for the Messianic age, not for any other uh, benefit that may accrue and will exist. But that's all secondary or tertiary. The main reason was peace so that we could thrive in a spiritual sense. And that's why one of the things that the prophet Isaiah says when he talks about the Mashiach, that he is going to come and Mashmiya Shalom, he will announce peace. Peace is the ultimate uh, goal of the Messianic age, which is the way God's purpose in creating the world will be finally fulfilled. His purpose was to create that peace, to heal the division between God and the world. He gave us the Torah, which embodies that power to bring unity, external unity, internal unity. And the Messianic age, it will be finally realized. Thank you very much. And God willing, next week we'll go back to the third blessing that we missed in this series so that we can have a complete series on the Shemona Esrei.
Shut it down. Yeah, right.